Yes, so as has already been stated by the MC, my name is Alfred Elidei, and I'm going to be the moderator for this session. It's going to be a very interactive session, after which we are going to open the floor for you to ask questions as well. And so, yes, as has already been posited, the background of this conversation is borderless collaboration. We are always talking about the Africa we want, the Agenda 2063, but we are not really pursuing what would bring the Africa we want. And so this conversation is going to be that which will trigger that which is in you that possibly is quite dormant. We are going to bring out very salient points for you to take home in terms of how the Africa we want can be built and what are some of the systemic challenges or barriers. And we are also going to profile viable solutions to encourage us build the Africa we want through borderless collaboration. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be introducing the panelists who are going to join me, have this conversation, and they are very, very renowned and amazing personalities. And I am privileged to be moderating this session because of the wealth of knowledge they possess, and also the very, very prolific in their various fields. And so the first speaker today, or the panelist today, is, he is a respected researcher and policy analyst with expertise in African trade systems, youth entrepreneurship, and evidence-based development. His work focuses on translating frameworks like the EFCFTA into practical opportunities for young innovators across the continent. He is known for his strong analytical approach and commitment to research-driven solutions. He contributes to policy dialogues and development initiatives that advance economic empowerment and cross-border collaboration in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, help me with a resounding round of applause. Welcome here on stage, Dr. William Esiedu. Please, let's sustain the clap till he gets. Great. And here again is a very renowned scholar in culture, heritage, conversation, conservation, and indigenous knowledge systems. His research explores how African cultural practices, traditions, and community wisdom can drive sustainable development and strengthen social cohesion. He's a widely published academic and advocate for cultural revitalization, and I'm not going to break that, right? He brings deep insight into how African Sports Limited, an accredited football agency operating under the new FIFA regulations, where he leads athlete representation across the continent and the globe, talents development, and cross-border sports collaborations. He is widely recognized for his multidisciplinary expertise and forward-thinking leadership, and he continues to shape innovative business models and drive impactful youth and sports initiatives across Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding applause, help me welcome my brother here, Mr. Tony Bonsu. So panelists, here are your audience. Audience, here are your panelists. You can give it up for them once again. So again, we are going to be talking about the Africa we want. And I think that's a conversation we have had in so many rooms. I believe that you possibly have said this over and over again. And today is one of those times again. And today, while we were networking, one of the people engaged me and was asking me, how we have had so many conversations. In the times of Kwame Nkrumah, we had so many of these conversations. And it seems as if, okay, when we go home, what next? What happens? And I was telling her that the 1% that would cause the change is what makes a difference. And even in Ghana, we have 35 million people, but the people that are making the decision for the 35 million are not even up to 1,000. And so we could be part of that 1,000. And so this is also going to be one of such conversations we have had, several plenary sessions. And so today we are expecting, our audience are expecting some also conviction and also direction in our responses. And so once again, welcome to this panel discussion. And so I'm going to start from you. And it is because you are seated right here. So, so the question we may be asking ourselves is what cross-border is and what does it even look like? And in practice, how would it look like, or how does it look like? And what is stopping us from achieving that?
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity, and Irema, thank you so much for the vision. When we talk about cross-border, we are talking about seeing Africa as one family. So imagine that you want to buy something right now. Imagine the whole of Africa So imagine the whole of Africa being like Mokola Market. And you can walk there and then buy whatever you want. So if that imagination is what we want to create. And if you have read about the Agenda 2063, that is what African Union wants to make. And from the perspective of UNDP, where I serve, we want to ensure that every youth has the opportunity to collaborate with another youth in another African country. And we are giving that leverage based on all our programs that we are strategically aligning. When time comes, I will mention a few. But for example, there is now what we call at UNDP the Timbuktu. What we are doing is that we are strategically mobilizing $1 billion US, such that we are able to connect, African youth in all the African countries who have innovation, to come together and collaborate in a startup ecosystem. So in that sense, if you are a youth in Ghana and you don't have the financial wherewithal, it doesn't matter. But so far as you find yourself in the space of Africa as part of the African family, what UNDP is doing is to connect you to someone who has that creativity. And so you may have one idea, another person in another country in Africa will have another idea. When we come together, we can collaborate. So for me, I see this collaboration as an entry point, where we can give the African youth the opportunity to explore beyond their jurisdiction. And so what I tell young people always is that, look, don't just look within, just don't look around you, look external too. There are opportunities. There are people that are really knowledgeable. There are people that are willing to buy into your idea, which may not be even around you or in Ghana, but they could be in another country. You have the social media, you have the LinkedIn. Why don't you use that leverage, those platforms, to look for people who can connect to your vision? So let me end here and let my other colleagues also talk. Thank you.
Please, let's give it up for him. You have brought about a very interesting topic. I think it's also in alignment with the African Union's 1 million next level agenda, which I think the UNDP is also doing. So I would go to Dr. Dixon with this. So clearly it means that there is a plan for Africa. There is a plan. There has always been a plan for Africa. I think the implementation has always been the problem. We see in Berlin conference, after the Berlin conference where, we were divided, and now language became an issue. Language, among other challenges, became an issue. How do we overcome some of these systemic barriers so that you'll be able to achieve that which Mr. Esiedu has spoken about?
Good morning, and thank you. We know Africa consists of 54 countries, and we have over 2,000 languages spoken on the continent. So it's understandable to have asymmetries with language. But William is saying that we need to build multimodal teams. And these teams should consist of young, entrepreneurs from different countries. So language then becomes a barrier. So how do we resolve it? The best solution is to build the capacities of African young entrepreneurs to speak multiple languages. So at Goa Street is a funding agency. And in one of our requirements, we are saying that Goa Street is saying that teams must come in with, from different countries. And then we are looking at multilingual teams. So teams that can speak more than one language. So how can educational institutions ensure this? We have to be intentional about language exchange programs. We have to embed it in entrepreneurial training in the tertiary institutions. And when we're able to do that, maybe we can't leverage on all the over 2,000 spoken languages in Africa, but we can capitalize on the best or the most spoken ones. I call those languages the PAFES. PAFES, P being Portuguese, A being Arabic, F being French, E being English, and S being Swahili. We know that these 5 languages are the most dominant languages spoken on the continent. So we have to be intentional about language exchange programs that focuses on these 5 languages. And when we're also running summits that are regional, we shouldn't limit it to, English and just French. We have to also expand it to include the other 3 I mentioned. And then we can then build the capacities of African young entrepreneurs in terms of language, because it is the bridge, it is, the means of communication. And if we are unable to establish this link, then we would have trust issues. Collaboration is about trust, and trust, the genesis, is with language. So let's build their capacities in speaking no less than 2, maybe 5 languages. It is practical, it's doable. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much for that. Please, let's give it up for him as well. Wow. So in your response, I see a very diversified, can you all hear me? All right. I see a very diversified Africa where you speak about these different languages and how we can embrace it. Now, you're a serial entrepreneur. You've also done several cross-border engagements, businesses, and we always talk about having a unified currency. at this point, we don't know whether it is a dream or is going to still be, it's what's it called? It's going to be a reality, right? Now, the question is, if this is going to be a reality, how can that transform the entrepreneurial system, the trade entrepreneurial system in Africa?
Thank you so much. Good morning. So I'm going to pick my answers from what my senior colleagues here have mentioned so far. The first speaker made mention of something. He says we want to build an Africa that is like Mokola markets in terms of trade. So if we are all trading in one setting, then we should have a unified currency. Let's take other countries, for instance. When you go to Nigeria, they use the Naira. When you go to other countries, South Africa, they use the Rand, and other countries. So mostly when you're moving from Ghana to Nigeria, when you get to the border, you may have to convert your cedi into Naira. There are instances whereby your own currency tends to lose value, or bringing the one you got into the other country back into your country loses value. So you see, it creates some sort of differences when it comes to trade. So if we are looking at one borderless Africa whereby we can all say, okay, this is priced as A. If you come to Ghana, it's A. If you go to here, it's B. And we don't have to look at exchange rates, then we should have a unified currency, to me. Because let's look at the EU system. When we move players, since I'm a sports person, to Europe, and you want to do your marketing, whatever European country you go to, they may have, apart from the euros they use, they may have their personal, currencies they may want to use. But the trade or the purchases or the marketing is done in the unified currency, which is the euro. So which means if I should sell a player in Italy in euros, and I take that same euro to Germany, whatever money I got will not lose value. But instances whereby you sell a player, or maybe you do business in a currency and you are moving to a different country and you may have to do with exchange rates, to me, I think it's some sort of balustrade or some sort of, should I say, blockade in terms of our business world. So Africa, as we are preaching to have a borderless Africa, we should have a unified currency. And with that, it's going to help the youth in every way. So you know that if, let's say you're securing a loan from a bank to run your business, the loan you secure from your country, if you go to Nigeria, it should have the same value. It should have the same thing you want to do because it's a unified currency. Thank you.
Right, sure. Thank you very much. Please let's give it up for him. So I think he spoke into the heart of the youth. And in the audience, we have young startups, founders who want to accelerate their programs, their businesses. But the question for which reason they came here is, how can the African Continental Free Trade Area help them amplify their voices, their businesses, and how can it help them to be able to power their trade across the continent?
Alfred, thank you. I cannot answer that question if I don't touch on the language issue and the financial part, because this sits at the heart of trade, And last year, UNDP ran a survey, and almost 1,000 MSMEs. And one of the challenges, the highest was, of course, logistics, but one of the challenges that businesses are facing or entrepreneurs are facing is language barrier and then finances. So let me offer some kinds of insight into this. When it comes to language, as my colleague has rightly said, we have to leverage on certain languages which are predominant. Of course, last week there was a regional ECOWAS meeting. And at the meeting, it happened that we had a technical challenge with, the languages were being translated simultaneously. And then we had an issue with the system. So the meeting halted for almost an hour, because we could not continue, because there is Guinea-Bissau, there is Nigeria, there is other countries. And if they cannot understand the English you are speaking, how then do you make a decision? Now, this is where the youth comes in. When there is a problem, the youth or someone must take a decision to solve that. And so if you are a youth here, that's where it's important for you to understand what is the problem. The problem is a language barrier. What can I do? Now there are high tech. Imagine that in this room, I'm speaking English, and simultaneously there is about, you have this headset that the language, the English I'm speaking, is being translated into French, Portuguese, and all the languages my colleague. But this is something an entrepreneur must build. This is something someone must take up. Elon Musk and all those guys, they look at where the potholes are, and then they take advantage. Of course, there may not be the finance, and that's why UNDP Development Partners comes in. That, for example, Tumbutu and all that I'm mentioning, if you can propose and sell that idea to development partners, I think they are ready to buy in. I remember when I was in university, my colleague started what he calls Nikasimo. I think Nikasimo is a Gan word that means learning. And you know, it was just like a joke. But today, he has been funded by the MasterCard Foundation, and he has a lot of partners. And I understand, he told me, he has hired people that he's paying more than a lot of banks are paying their employees. So what am I saying? Whenever there is a problem, look, you need to seek an opportunity and a collaboration, from wherever you will get it to handle that problem. Secondly, is the finances. Indeed, there is what we call PAPS. If you understand PAPS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. What they are trying to do is to be the mediator between financial institutions in different African countries. So, for example, if Alfred, right? Yeah. Alfred wants to make a payment now in Kenya, you make that request through your commercial bankers. Then your commercial bankers transfer the transaction to PAPS. Then PAPS, now at the receiving end, works on it, checks the validation, checks the data, checks that there is no fraud, and then transfer it to the commercial bank of the person you are sending to in Kenya. So that's what they are doing. But what's the problem? The challenge is that only a few countries are part of it. Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, just a few, about 6 or 7. So what we are doing is that let's get involved. Let's encourage our bankers. Let's encourage the people that are policymakers to get involved. Now, I've talked too much, so let me swiftly answer that question. Look, the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is a reality. I have been in a lot of meetings. One of the challenges is non-tariff barrier. The idea of intra-African trade and Africa Continental Free Trade Area is to progressively, reduce the tariffs that countries in Africa place on your product when you sell in other countries in Africa. So the idea is that, look, if you can prove that the resources and all the input you use for your production are from Africa, then you enjoy what we call the tariff, free tariff. But the tariff is not free automatically. It will take, for example, least developed countries, it will take 10 years. Then advanced countries will take just 5 years for the category A. I mean, I don't have to explain the technicalities, but later. So what is happening is that over a space of 10 years, from 2021 to 2030, there is a linear decline of the tariffs. So by the time we get to, for example, 2030, when you send certain products to certain African countries, there will be no tariffs. But the challenge, Alfred, is non-tariff barrier. When you get to the airports right now or the customs right now, and they say, look, this is happening, but we don't care. We will still do corruption, regulatory. Those are the things we are trying to fix as development partners. And I can bet you that in the next 2, 3, 4 years, the African Continental Free Trade Area will become a reality that we will all enjoy. Thank you.
Let's give it up for him. Wow, and I'm here sinking into this conversation, and he's talking about the movement of goods and services free. And I think one very important thing you said is, yeah, they can say that there is a law, there is a policy, and yet we don't care. And so in here comes the restriction of persons. And that is the next thing we are going to be talking about. So the goods and services are moving freely currently under the EFCFTA. However, the persons who are supposed to be moving the goods, some way because of culture, and culture and other factors are being restricted. Now, the aspiration 5 of the Agenda 2063 talks about cultural diversity. You're a cultural expert. How do we leverage on culture to either unite? Is it really uniting or dividing us at this point, where we are seeing that the free movement of persons protocol has only seen 4 ratifications? And these 4 ratifications are even not the African heavyweights. And yet the African heavyweights are not really ratifying this. We've seen that 54 African countries have signed onto the EFCFTA. Now, how do we leverage on culture to change the narrative, to unite the African people, and to even let the young ones here understand that you can still trade with someone in Libya, trade with someone in Somalia, someone in Nigeria?
Thank you for this question. Culture, I would say, is Africa's most powerful but underutilized resource. The reason why I'm saying that is we tend to have a narrow view of what culture is. Culture is not just tied to our identity as a people. We have to expand our understanding of culture to mean regional collaboration. And we should have what we term as cultural empathy. Cultural empathy. And what that means is accepting what is in other cultures. We have to learn to accept what Egyptians, what those in Tanzania, their values, their cultural values, what they hold dear. We have to accommodate that. And we have to also develop what we term as cultural intelligence. So after knowing and accepting the differences, the dynamics in culture, then we have to be prepared to work with those in other cultures. Now we understand them, so it becomes easy to collaborate, to work with them. And when we are also thinking of solutions, like we've identified regional problems in climate change, agriculture, health, fintech, what have you, we have to look for the solutions in culture. Our traditional knowledge systems are not resting in the past. Our ancestral wisdom are alive, and we can dig for solutions from them. So for now, that is what the response I will give for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, let's give it up for him. So, a very interesting take, and I lead an international law organization, and I think about 2 years ago I had some cultural shock. We were having a meeting, and this one from Gambia, this one from other country, and their interesting take on what I thought was a very simple matter really shocked me. And I was like, wow. So, what I had to do was, I realized at this point, there's not any diplomacy. Go and pray. So I had to go and pray. And I think I developed some level of tolerance. I had to understand, okay, these people behave a certain way because of what happens in their country. and I had to take some other factors into consideration in my engagement with some of these people. And so it's a very important thing that we really talk about the conversation around culture. And so we are coming to you, Mr. Tony, and you also are in the intersection of law, business, among others, and you have done a lot of cross-border engagement. What are some of the cross-border strategies you have identified that the youth in this room can carry with them such that they'll be able to succeed in whatsoever they are doing? And how do you think they can tap into these untapped potentials? Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again. So with the little I've been exposed to, I'll speak about credential mobility. So when I say credential mobility, one may ask, what is it about? I believe once you are looking at unified Africa, we should have an Africa whereby if one person graduates here in Ghana with a skill, with a certificate, with a license, that same person can be able to utilize it in every other African country, or the countries that have decided to come up together to form the AFCFTA. That's the Continental Free Trade Area. So looking at these things, you come to a realization that it doesn't restrict the youth. It doesn't limit them. Example, I always use sports because that is my avenue. Let's look at the European markets. How many of us are very abreast with the France national team? Good. At least we have a couple of people who are abreast with. You can tell the majority of the team players are Africans. People even call them the African United. So you see, that tells that Africa has a lot of talent. With regards to what my senior colleague said, most of these talents are under-tapped or are not really even tapped to the core. So if we have this credential mobility whereby you in Ghana can seek or see an opportunity in South Africa, and without even having to move digitally, you can be able to resolve or solve that issue you've seen or that gap, which is going to benefit you directly. I think those are some of the things we should look at as entrepreneurs. Because if AFCFTA is coming into play, then how should it benefit us directly? Let's put the nationwide aside. Let's put the country as a whole aside. You as an individual, you as a business person, how would you be able to move through these areas whilst they are creating a borderless system? So I stick to the fact that we should have credential mobility. Thank you.
Wow, good. Please let's give it up for him. Credential mobility. That's very interesting. Wow. So we are going to take our very last session of questions, after which I'm going to open the floor for some questions from the audience as well. And so right now, the physical borders are failing us, Mr. Isiedu, or Dr. Isiedu. How do we build digital bridges?
Thank you, Alfred. So UNDP, sorry, everything UNDP, but because I'm a researcher there, so we did a digital survey, a digital research. We wanted to know how Africans are utilizing digital platforms. Of course, you see, digital, we have e-commerce. You know, e-commerce is different in its own different space, where you have some kind of website, you put your goods there, you put your services there, and you are selling. Of course, WhatsApp is even a form of e-commerce. But we were looking at digital platforms. How much of, for example, those Amazons, how much of that do we have in Africa, where you both buyers and sellers? So there are many buyers, there are many sellers. And we found out that there are just few. Just few. This is where I come in. There is a problem. And so how do we tap, as my senior colleague said, how do we tap into the problems and then make it a solution? Even if I don't have the technical know-how about digital services, how do I collaborate? And that's what we're talking about. How do I collaborate, or just me with the idea, collaborate with another person to help solve this problem. You know, we are always looking for jobs, which is never coming, and writing applications. But I think that we should begin to look for problems and see how best can I contribute. I may not be able to solve the problem, but how best do I contribute to solving that problem? How do I collaborate with other like-minded people who are, so for instance, me, I'm not really entrepreneur-based. I am not a risk taker, and I know that. But how best can I collaborate with someone who has a hard heart for entrepreneurship? That is the things I'm beginning to look at. So, yes, development partners are doing their best. The AFCFTA Secretariat, today, the secretariats have what we call the, so when you have non-tariff barriers, you have any issue with your trade, you can just put it digitally and report. And when you report, they will respond to you. You know, there are people you can call, they have contact. So they are trying their best, you know, to solve the problem. They are putting a lot of money. I understand the European Union has pumped some money into this kind of African continental. So development partners are trying to do their best. Of course, most of them that are putting their money are not even Africans. So we need to really open our hearts and take advantage of what we are seeing. Because if we sit with the mindset of when am I going to get my next job? How am I going to write a good application letter? Then we have a long way to go.
When we sit with when we are going to get our next job, we have a long way to go. Dr. Dixon, how do we then cause a mindset shift with the African youth?
Well, most African young entrepreneurs see their neighbors as competitors. But I feel that threat of competition should cease. We have to build within ourselves that fire of confidence, rather than thinking that other African countries, other youth there and their innovations are a threat to ours. I feel that we should rather, that should rather move us to collaborate with them instead. Mm-hmm. So rather than seeing them as a threat, we should see them, other African countries, as markets instead. See their problems as, layers for innovation, rather than viewing them as a level of competition. That is what I think.
Wow. So, dwelling on the level of competition, Mr. Tony, so every country has their own identity. So how do we then, not in the spirit of competition, but in collaboration, leverage our national identities to a Pan-African identity? So we all have various national identities, and that is what breeds the competition. Now we are talking about collaboration. So how do we then leverage our national identities to then a Pan-African identity where we collaborate?
Okay, thank you once again. I think with that, we just need to build a unified African network. So it doesn't differentiate. It becomes togetherness, inclusive. Once you are in this country and we have a unified African network, you should be able to relate, you should be able to be in line, you should be able to communicate with someone in Kenya on the same problem. You are able to identify a problem or identify something there, and because we have that unified African network, you can reach out to a colleague and say, this is what I've seen here and this is what I want to do. I've come to realization that is your jurisdiction. How do we do that together? So I'll throw a bit of light on FALAS, the Federation of African Law Students. they are building a unified framework and a unified voice. So you come to realization that they have different countries, Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, and even most of the North African countries. But because they have one goal and one purpose, it's easier for them to communicate. There were times people from Falas could do internship in other countries without having to move there. So you see, whereby we get a collaboration and a competition, it doesn't say I'm from Ghana, so I can't work in Nigeria. I'm from Nigeria, so I can't do anything in Cameroon. So we having that unified African network is going to help to collaborate well. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. A unified, let's give it up for them, please. So a unified African network means that I am not an African living, I'm not a Ghanaian in Africa, but I'm rather an African living in Ghana, an African living in Nigeria, an African living in Uganda, and not like a Ugandan in Africa, where we are more about the geographical identity, but rather we identify as one people living in different parts of the continent. And so that is how we draw the curtains on this session. But this is now your turn to ask a question. And if you're here and you have a question for any of the panelists, this is your time. You have about 7 minutes to do so. And I have identified 2. So we are going to take all the questions, after which they are going to respond. And so I'm going to, gender bias, I was saying that ladies first, right? So please, let's hear from the lady.
Hello, thank you. So I'm Priscilla, and I always identify as a midwife everywhere I go. So I'm Priscilla and I'm a midwife. And I want to ask a question about the Pan-Africanism and then the unity bit. So I realize that in Africa, not just in Africa, maybe in other places, but Africa is more culturally built, like from where I stand. And there are other negative cultural habits, or should I say, other negative cultural processes, let me put it that way, that sometimes
we call them unproductive.
Yes, unproductive. Yes, thank you. So they kind of interfere with our, should I say, our conversations in a way that, for instance, in some cultures, let me use even in Ghana, for instance, in some cultures in Ghana, the woman is seen as just to be under the man, or the man is supposed to be lord over the woman. So when you bring any suggestions, or you have, these things tend to interfere a lot with our interactions with others, because it comes in our businesses and interactions as well. So how do we then try to go about this, or should I say these things that interfere with human rights, how do we go about them to make our collaboration successful? Thank you.
Sure. Please, let's give it up for her.
Yeah.
And you have a question as well? Yeah.
I wanted to respond.
Yeah, I wanted us to take all the questions and, yeah. Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Please, my name is Bernard from the University of Ghana. And I think our panelists have made mention of most of the things that are bordering the continent. But what I want to know is that what is stopping us from achieving all these goals? Because he made mention of, the language barrier, looking at or envision the continent as one market, right? And also creating an avenue for collaboration. I want to know, these AU leaders, right, or our political leaders who are in charge, are they the ones not making the right decision for us, or they've not identified all these problems that we are talking about? Because I believe when they go to these meetings, they always make mention of all these things that you are also talking about. So what is stopping them from achieving such goals? Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Yeah, any more questions? Okay, I see a hand there. Wait, let's take all the hands once and for all. Okay, so if you have a question, your hands should be up. Your hands are up? Okay, so we are going to take a question from the one standing. Please stand, okay? Just stand, yeah? And could you kindly stand? So, wow. Okay, so yes, 2 of you should also stand. And yeah, so yeah. So, no, but yeah. just so that we are taking, so please take note of the people standing, right? Okay, please proceed.
Okay, first off, a big congratulations to the organizers, and thank you, the speakers, for the in-depth knowledge being shared. My name is Koku Jiwonu, and I identify as a free thinker. My question. Along the line, two of the speakers spoke and they made mention of culture, empathy. I think that was Doc. And this question I've been asking or seeking answers for. And I think it's an opportunity to seek that answer here as well. Now, there's a trend where most Ghanaians, let me use Ghana as a sample, are identifying with Halloween, which is it's a cultural practice somewhere, and we are embracing it. As much as I have my reservations towards it, then I am from the Volta region, and 90% of the time when you tell people, when I mention my hometown, there's this stigma that comes with it. And that thing, I get that a lot. Why are we not embracing our cultures as Ghanaians first? Okay, we have different cultures in Ghana. Why are we not embracing our culture diversity and then leaning towards using it as a way to project our African identity? When the Portuguese came to Africa, Ghana, Edina, to be specific, they brought in their culture. They indoctrinated us over 800 years, and we've embraced theirs. We are practicing it and practicing probably better than theirs. When I was in Germany, church service lasted for basically 15 minutes. When you go to church in Ghana, 8 hours and counting, we are just yet warming up. What is the way forward? How do we lean towards embracing our cultural diversity as Africans, as Ghanaians first, and then the world at large? Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. Right, so, yeah. But is Halloween no kaka to be? Right, sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Ernest. I'm very fascinated about the man from UNDP stressing much on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I think it's a good thing, and it has been long overdue. But my problem has to do with its sensitization going down to the educational levels or the curriculum, because a lot of our youth, especially in basic, secondary, and tertiary, are not aware of the after and what the benefits of after comes. Even some are not even aware the headquarters is even in Ghana. And so, what plans does UNDP have to collaborate with the After Secretariat so that the sensitization will go down to the opinions of the masses, so that those who have aspirations for cross-border trade will get first-hand information about the processes? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Imali, please, Imali, in front here.
Hi, thank you so much. Actually, I had a comment because I've been part of these AFTCA discussions, and it's so promising for Africa, but I'm just wondering when we will, as a continent, come up with this currency already. Because I have so many currencies in my house, and sometimes when I go back to the countries I got these currencies from, they told me, oh, we changed. We changed, so now they're no longer, they're useless, you see. But I feel like if we had one African currency, it would really help us. Gaddafi said, talked about this and he was killed. Other people talked about this and they disappeared. So we just wanted to inquire, how can we collectively put our voices together so that when we talk about this, it's now an African, not massacred for that. The other thing I think it's safe for me to say, because I'm not Ghanaian, is I feel like Ghanaian, it doesn't really matter where you come from, whether you come from a village in the Volta region or Kifa, okay, I don't know, that name is really long, or yeah, that one, or if you come from Kadu in Nigeria. Anyway, the thing is this: if you succeed, nobody cares which tribe you come from. So success should be your primary goal. When you succeed, people will not start saying, oh, you're Ghanaian from this place. People will say, that's our person, that's from Africa. So I feel it's also the epistemic view that you want to inherit so that you go forward. Because if you're waiting for people to come together culturally, structurally, that's never going to happen. There are people, even Jesus said, there are people who will always be poor among you. So you can't wait for people to come up to the same ontological level so that you move. Thrive anyway, keep going. And as you get there, maybe people will be like, you know what, this cultural thing is not working. Let me embrace the newness. That's just my own perspective. I hope I'll not be prosecuted for it. But if I am, then I'm ready for it. For us Kenya to say, bado mapambano. Yeah, so yeah, and maybe since I'm here, I'll start teaching some Ghanaians how to revolt, because we've taught Tanzanians and you've seen it's working. So yeah, you have to change how you think so that you can get ahead. Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, yes.
Hi, my name is Deborah. So this conversation is really interesting to me for many reasons. I'm Ghanaian and Beninese, but I live in the States. And part of the question that I think someone back there asked is about cultural identity and essentially the erasure of cultural identity that happens when we talk about these unification or Pan-Africanism movements, right? And my question for you all, especially those within this field of research, is how do you preserve one's culture while trying to create this unified Africa? Because ultimately, the differences in our countries are what make us so extremely special, you understand? Africa in its entirety, we know that if you want to go for cocoa, you go to a certain country. If you want to go for gold, you go to a certain country. If you want to do X, Y, Z, you go to a different country. But when trying to unify in that kind of way, or try to essentially say that we're just African, it removes a level of uniqueness. I believe it removes a level of, I guess, diversity that we have on the continent, which makes us so special. There's some research that's saying that Africa currently is one of the fastest growing economies because of our differences. That is the key marker of why we are developing so quickly. Countries or continents outside of Africa don't have as diverse of resources. They don't have the diverse, in general, they don't have as much diversity as Africa does. You can look in the same Africa and find someone who speaks Swahili and also find someone who speaks English, French, and a different local language that ultimately brings them closer to not only cultural identity, but, success of the continent altogether. So I don't know if that question was very clear, but how do you preserve one's cultural identity while trying to further bring unification and Pan-Africanism on the continent?
Rasha, please, let's give that. And our last question from, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel. I wear many hats, and one of the hats I wear is in the AFCFTA space. And one of the things I struggle with in the AFCFTA space, as someone who started back in 2019 with colleagues, when we didn't even know the Secretariat was going to be in Accra, was that even as we have been sensitizing as best we can, the media and whoever else about what the AFCFTA is about, we're also struggling with the fact that there's a lot of stakeholder conversations around AFCFTA that is divorced from really breaking it down to what it means to the common people. I tend to get a lot of challenges from within my own people whom I work with, because some of them are very happy hobnobbing with the AU and all these people because it looks good sometimes. But the real truth of the matter is the AFCFTA is part of the whole project of Africa's integration. It is the biggest thing now. And it's so ironic that it's coming from a country where Pan-Africanism has drawn inspiration from, with Kwame Nkrumah and so on and so forth. And 4 years down the line since the FTA Secretariat was established in Accra, so many people still don't understand. And I have a problem also with the fact that our media largely is part to blame. I work with different AU agencies as well, not necessarily to do with AFCFTA. And one of the biggest challenges, sometimes I get asked to mobilize Ghanaian media for, different AU agencies or whatever. And the biggest issue always is the media in Ghana is very happy to report politics. It's like they get a high on politics in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. AFCFTA is put in the section of either international news or maybe there's a conference in Accra, then they'll talk about it, the media will talk about it. But otherwise, they don't really break it down sufficiently. What is the UNDP and some of the panel, what do you think quickly needs to be done to reverse this problem? Because I have a lot of friends in different regions across the continent, a lot of them in East Africa, who take hold of the opportunity to mobilize conversations around the AFCFTA. And you're wondering, how come in Ghana, where the Secretariat is at, we're not seeing that with the media? The media is too fixated with politics, and we say it privately, but we need to say it publicly a lot more. We know that, yes, sometimes the politicians do own these stations and so on, but it needs to change. We will not get anywhere with the AFCFTA if we are going to leave journalists from outside Ghana to come and tell us what the AFCFTA is about when the Secretariat is here. And that causes problems for the youth as well, because they're sitting there wondering, okay, we have an AFCFTA, what is it doing? How come we're having foreigners come to tell us what the AFCFTA is? So how do you change this conundrum? Because sometimes it's very frustrating. You get to the point where you don't want to talk about it anymore, but we really need to confront it. What do you think the media needs to quickly do to move beyond talking about politics all the time and realize that there are bigger issues in Ghana that transcend politics? Yeah, that's about it.
Sure, thank you very much. Please, let's give it up for our audience. Amazing questions. And I'm going to start with you. AFCFTA, UNDP. That's a lot. 2 minutes.
2 minutes for all the questions.
Because of the time, but
I understand. Yeah, so these questions shows that our people are very interested in what is happening. Let me start from my senior here. So in every country, there is what we call the National Implementation Committee. So understand that the AFCFTA, as you rightly said, is an initiative under the AU. And so we use the AU countries, right? So AU in itself, Ghana is Kenya and Uganda, everybody is under the AU. Now, the AU would utilize the people in the country. So what we call the National Implementation Committee. This is a committee under the Ministry of Trade and Industry. They are supposed to ensure that the Africa Continental Free Trade goes to everybody in the country. You understand? So, and then they should tell us, they should tell the AU, they should tell the ECOWAS how they are going to foster, what conduit they are going to use, what media engagement they are going to. So they have this plan. I can bet you these are strategic plans on paper. Now, where we sit as UNDP is to facilitate government to ensure that these things are going to. So last Friday, there was what we call the National Dialogue at the Labadi Beach Hotel. And what we saw was that they were making adverts of AFCFTA in English. So my colleagues and I just said, no, you must translate all these adverts into a local dialect and then push it across the country. We cannot be tickling ourselves and laughing that everybody understands the English language. So these are some of the things, of course, we will be doing. And UNDP has what we call the NIMDA series. NIMDA series from in Ghana country office. What the country office is doing is to mobilize many of the MSMEs and then build them, capacity building. How do we consolidate our product? How do we label our product? How do we pitch our product? all these things are things the UNDP is doing. Currently, we are doing at the regional level what we call the digital database. What are we doing? We are trying to put all businesses under the UNDP portfolio or under the FCFTA portfolio in one database, such that when an investor in Ghana or outside Ghana or in Kenya or outside Kenya just click a button, can see all those in shea butter, all those in the cosmetic industry. So these are some of the things we are doing. There is also what we call the SDP, Supply Development Program. So all these things are, there are things going on, honestly, but we cannot talk about all of them. But you need to search, you need to engage the development partners, you need to ask questions. So shortly, the SDP is Supply Development Program. What UNDP is doing is to connect small-scale businesses in Ghana, in Nigeria, across Africa, to big firms that needs our inputs. So as one firm, you cannot go to, for example, a big firm like Dangote, but we need to consolidate, and then we need to form associations. So that's what UNDP is about. There is no time, so let me just, maybe afterwards we can talk.
Yeah, good. Please, let's give it up for him. Let's give it up for him. Yes. Doc.
Yeah, so I'm going to respond to the question on culture. Unproductive cultural practices and how we can root it out. I think the first step is we need to reorient our understanding or definition of culture, how we view culture. Culture is not a static phenomenon. It is progressive. It is transformative. It is something that we need to sensitize people on. If our ancestors were alive today, I'm sure most of the things, most of the cultural values, and even practices that today we are seeing them as unproductive, they would have worked on them, made some transformations. It's something that we have to take note of. And we can only do this through, a phased steps in terms of sensitization and awareness. And we shouldn't limit it just to our academic institutions. We have to go down where the problem is with the local communities. One thing I've seen with the academic research that we do is that we lose touch with the communities that we researched on. So we are putting a premium in the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We are putting a premium on research communication at the grassroots, and that is what we have to do. And let me also add that a lot of funders are interested in funding research on exposing unproductive cultural practices. Some communities are not speaking up, but we have to know and then, make people aware that these unproductive cultural practices are there and we need to root them out. We shouldn't say that they are a part of our cultural fiber and that we need to accept it as it is. No, our forebears would have made revisions if they were alive. So it is something that I want us to take note of. Let me also respond. Respond to the question on wrong tagging of tribes or ethnic societies. Now, one gentleman mentioned that he's an Ewe and he's been tagged with Diabo and all that. And I want to say that when you hear people, saying things that are not right about your ethnic society, what should you do? You have to speak up. Make them know the uniqueness of your culture, but in a peaceful manner. We don't want to be fighting. On social media like Facebook, I saw a certain gentleman posting a lot about the Asantis and then using it as a bait in frowning on other, ethnic societies. I feel it is very wrong. In as much as we want to promote our culture, the uniqueness of our culture, like the lady in red Atta mentioned, we shouldn't do it by, stepping on the feet of other cultures. We don't want to promote any unhealthy, cultural fights and all that. So, yes, we should promote our diversities, but we have to also respect other cultures. And we have to also build cultural resilience and tolerance. So when you hear people talking shit about your culture, develop that resilience to absorb it, and then you have to exude the good aspects of your culture to them. Speak up. Don't just be mute when people are talking trash about your culture.
Sure. Thank you very much. Right. Let's give it up for him.
I think I've also learned something. So now if people are speaking against my culture, Doc, I'll take my time to listen to it and tell them what is good about my culture. To answer before I answer the question, that has been something that, gets round and round and round. Even within our country, you get people speaking down on some cultures, saying this is superior, that is that. But I believe from time to time, we should all learn something. We are all Africans living in different settings. So if we are all Africans, then which means we are one people. So one is not bigger than the other, one is not superior. So my answer is to the gentleman from University of Ghana, asking if our leaders don't see these problems, if they don't resolve it. I look at it from where I'm sitting, I see them doing something, like what we have there, Continental Free Trade Area. That is also something that has been created to help resolve these things. And we should be very mindful in particular that these are different policies with countries or different cultures you are bringing together, different languages. So if it's not well inculcated or it's not well structured, they might do everything, but they might not achieve their sole goal, which is togetherness, having a borderless Africa. So they are doing well gradually, and we are all putting our voice as a support. And you can also put your voice as a student. You guys have a lot of platforms, and use that as a means or a medium to be able to communicate. Thank you.
Sure, please, let's give it up for them. Yes, it's really been an insightful session. And on the issue of culture, I myself came from, I was born in a very tribalistic environment. And I was very glad at the early stages of my life that my name did not have any Ewe thing, right? All my siblings, funny enough, all my siblings had Ewe names. I didn't have. My name was Alfred Kwesi Day. And you could not tell where I come from. And so I was tagged as Akan. And I was so good. I was okay with it. So long as I wasn't attacked by some of my colleagues. But I grew up, and now people know me by Ellie more than Alfred, because I grew up and I realized this is my identity. And so how do I change that? And I had to speak to my parents about it, that I want to stand for my identity. I want people to know that Ewes are like this too, Ewes are like that too, and not to be tagged with a traditional mindset of who my people could be. We could be, we are also diversified. So thank you very much for your time. Panelists, it's a pleasure having you. Cross-border collaboration, amazing conversation. And the good thing about this summit is that the conversation, the panel session doesn't end here. It ends with you. It ends even while we are still engaging. So any question that you felt wasn't answered, any question that you still want to ask them, you are still free to approach them at the break to still ask them. So thank you very much for your time, and good to know.